The M3 investigation. You're going to be inventing a game that uses dice. You would like the probability of each player winning to be close to 0.5 as possible. And you don't want it to be possible to draw. To make it easier, you're going to call the players Anne and Bob. We're first of all going to go over section A. Anne and Bob just roll one dice each. For example, we could say Anne is on the left and Bob is on the right. If Anne's score is the same or higher than Bob, Anne wins. So Anne's score is lower, so she loses. Here, she would win as it's the same or higher. Here, Anne on the left would win because her score is higher than Bob's. Here, Anne would win because the score is the same. If Anne's score is lower, then Bob wins. Draw a sample space for this situation. So what you have to do is go onto Google Sheets and create a table. First of all, I made the columns narrower by selecting them all using the shift and then moving them in and out like this. Then I selected a 6x6 grid, for example, and then I selected the border, which is this button here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to have column and row headers. We're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we're going to do the same for the column headers as well. Remember, if you want to zoom in or make it bigger, what you should do is change the zoom here. So what we're then going to do is we're going to call one Anne and one Bob. Let's call Anne the column headers and Bob the row headers. And we're going to say at 1, 1, who wins? Is it Anne or Bob? Now, it says here if Anne's score is the same, then she wins. So I'm going to put an A here. And then you're going to continue filling out these 36 spaces to say whether Anne or Bob wins. This is not the correct answer, but your grid is going to look something like this when you've finished it with all 36 spaces filled in. What you're then going to do is you're going to delete the question, explain what you've done and include a screenshot. You're then going to play the game with a friend. You can play this with real dice or you can use dice online. So what you have to do for this is just type in dice generator. You go onto random.org and you can say 1 is Anne and 1 is Bob as before. You're then going to go onto Google Sheets or a Google Doc and you can say what's going to happen each round. So let's say if you put in the first 3 numbers, you can select them using the shift button and then drag them down and you can see it will go up to 20 for you. Then you're going to delete the excess numbers. Then you're going to say maybe Anne score, Bob score. And then you're going to just roll this dice multiple times. So if we rolled it here, we've got 5 and 4, then we've got 5 and 5. You do 5, 4, 5, 5, and then we're going to say who's going to win. And then again, just put A or B. Then, instead of rolling it manually with dice, such as using the random org generator, we're going to set up a random simulator on Excel. So I'm going to create a new sheet. This time, we're going to type in equals rand between, and this selects a number between 1, which is the low number, and 6, which is the high number. Like before, you could just drag the numbers down. We want it to include 20 numbers. So that means, let's say we start at 1, we want to go down to 20. So we're going to delete the excess numbers below. We're then going to just take these numbers and we're just going to copy them, Control C, Control V. Now we've got Anne's and Bob's. You might want to move these numbers down so that you can label them properly. You might want to move them down here, and then we've got Anne and then Bob. Now there's several ways you could work out who wins. Previously, we did 20 rounds, but this time it actually wants us to do 100 rounds. So the first thing you would do is you change this number so that it goes up to 101, which would be 100 times, because we started at cell 2. And then obviously we're going to do the same on the second column. Now what you could do is you could physically go through each round and see who wins, who loses. But there's an easier way of doing this, and I'm going to show you now. What I'd recommend you doing is a subtraction between the two. So I'm going to teach you how to do an if statement. We're going to type equals if. So we're going to say that if Bob minus Anne, and now we've got to decide if it's less than or equal to 0. Let's say less than 0. Now let's see if that makes sense. We're going to say that if Bob's score minus Anne's score is either 0 or more, then Anne is going to win. So if Bob minus Anne is less than 0, we are going to say Anne will win. So we're going to put A. And you need to put these here because we're writing text. And then when you press comma, and what happens if this is false? You're going to put B for Bob. Now let's see if this works. This is not correct here, you can see, because we have put here that Bob should win. Let's press enter and it will regenerate some more numbers. Here we'll say Anne will win. Here we'll say Anne will win. So to me, it looks like there's a problem when they're equal to each other. So if they're equal to each other, we need to change the criterion. And actually, I'm going to change it round. I'm going to say B2 minus C1 is less than 0. Then we've got Bob if the value is true and Anne if the value is false. And you can see there's a problem here because I've entered too many brackets. And it says function minus parameter 2 expects number values, but Bob is a text and cannot be changed. It's because I put C1 rather than C2. So Bob wins, correct. Bob wins, Anne wins, Bob wins. And we're going to see what happens when they're the same number. Anne wins, perfect, it suits now. We're going to say that if B minus C is less than 0, then Bob wins. If not, Anne wins. And then you just drag this down and go up to 101, and it will tell you each time whether Bob or Anne wins. We need to record who wins for at least 100 rounds of simulation. So at the bottom here, what we're going to do is we're going to do a Countif formula. Equals Countif, and the range is what numbers we're going to select. And we're going to see how many times Anne wins. So we're going to put how many times we get an A. And it says we've got 55. And every time you press enter, it's going to change. Compare the theoretical probability of the results of the real game and the simulation. Discuss the accuracy. So what this basically means is at the beginning of the investigation, we did a sample space. And from this sample space, we're going to get something what we call a theoretical probability. This means how many chances out of 36 is it that Anne wins, for example. So we get a theoretical probability that both Anne wins and Bob wins. Now, if we go on to sheet 3 and sheet 2, what we've got here is experimental probability. And this obviously is experimental probability. Now, the idea of the experimental probability versus the theoretical probability is that you've got to compare what the probability is here. It could be a percentage or a number between 1 and 0 with the experimental probability here. And you've got to talk about what's more accurate, the analytical method where you throw the dice, or the simulation method where you threw the dice 100 times. And then you need to discuss, is it probable that each player wins with a probability of 0.5? Yes or no, and give a little bit more detail, obviously. Let's go on to section B. Anne rolls 1 dice. Bob rolls 2 dice and picks the highest of 2 scores. If Anne's score is the same or higher than Bob, Anne wins. If Anne's score is lower than Bob's, Bob wins. For example, if we have a 5, 3 and 6, Bob's going to pick the 6, so Bob wins. So you need to work out a sample space for Bob's 2 dice and use it to complete the following diagram. So let's go on to a new sheet. This time we're going to go back to the previous sheet, which is sheet 1, and we're going to copy this sample space. We're going to go on to here, and this time instead of being Bob and Anne, we're going to have Bob 1 and Bob 2. Now this possibly might be the most complicated part of the investigation in the sense of the way it's worded in here. What we've got to do is say if we have an experiment and Bob throws a 1 and a 1. What number would he choose to win? Well, they're both the same, so he's going to choose the 1. If he rolls a 2 and a 1, what number is he going to choose to win? He would choose a 2. Now let's look at another random number here. So let's look at this cell. If he throws a 4 and a 3, the number that's going to win is a 4 because it is the bigger one. And what you need to do is fill out all 36 here. Then what you'll find is out of these numbers 1 to 6, in the internal part of the grid, we only have one option which will be a 1. We'll have 3 options that will be a 2. And you need to work out how many options out of 36 are the 4, 5 and 6. We then need to complete a tree diagram. We've done an awful lot of this in school, so I'm not going to go over this too much, but remember, we've got to complete the whole tree diagram. So every set of branches, these 6 branches need to add up to 1. These 2 branches need to add up to 1. These 2 branches need to add up to 1. So the way we think about this is Anne's going to roll a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. That's where there's dots here. And if Anne rolls a 1, the probability that Anne will win is going to be 1 out of 36. And the reason why is because the probability Bob is going to get a 1 is going to be 1 out of 36. Whereas when Anne rolls a 2, Anne's going to win with a probability out of 4 out of 36. You need to try and work out why this changes from 1 to 4. And think about what is going to happen. You might need to create another sample space. I'm not going to be able to help you with this too much. You're then going to repeat and play this game. So you're going to go into the random dice generator, and this time you are going to change it from 2 dice, and we're going to change it to roll to 3 dice. So we change this number here to 3, and then we press roll dice. So you could say the 2 left ones are Bob, and then this one is Anne. So we're going to say Bob's is 5 versus Anne's 6. This one's Bob's. Bob's got the same, so it's 3 versus 2. This one here, we've got Bob 6 and 3, and Anne is 5. We choose 6 because 6 is the biggest, so Bob would win because we've got 6 versus 5. Then we're going to set up a simulation on a spreadsheet for this game using the equals max function to find the maximum of Bob's scores. So what we'll do is we'll go back onto the spreadsheet. We are going to, I would say, copy and paste everything you can see here. We're going to go onto a new sheet. Now, difference this time is that we need to have an additional column. So we're going to click insert 1 column to the left. Now, Obviously, these two columns are not sorted yet, so I'm going to highlight them in yellow because we need to organise them, or red. Now, Bob is going to throw again, so he's going to have 2 opportunities to throw his dice. And we need to work out with another column, so let's insert another column to the left, the maximum. So you just type equals max, and then we're going to select this value, comma this value. And then what we do is we're going to scroll down. And here's the max. So now what we're going to do instead of what we did before is we're going to study 2 of the columns. We're going to study Bob's max versus Anne's original. So then we're going to change this statement to compare not A and B, but A and D. So I'll change this to D. Then I'm going to drag this down. And you can see it's already done for me. And we've got a change number there. The rest of the investigation is up to you to do. I've given you so much support in this lesson, and I think you can do it. Best of luck.